Heads are rolling in Carolina, and owner David Tepper has fired first-year head coach Frank Reich, not even one and done for their latest head coach. The Eagles have a huge comeback win on the Bills in overtime, and a whole lot more from Week 12 coming at you right now.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Big ups to all the everydayers out there. We appreciate you. We love you. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcast. Today's episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I didn't see this one coming. In fact, Matt, I thought it was going to be a different head coach that was fired when I woke up Monday morning, and it turns out it is not Brandon Staley yet. And I say yet because I do think that that's going to end, and we'll talk more about that football game with the Baltimore Ravens Sunday night. Maybe just they didn't have time after the flight. So maybe
it's a late game. Maybe give it time.
Yeah, it'll happen as soon as we finish recording this podcast on Monday morning, probably is what ends up happening. But Frank Reich fired in Carolina. A disastrous season. I don't understand what the plan is. If you fire a first-year head coach, you trade up in the draft for a quarterback. And Matt, the big question that I come away with immediately is who the heck would even want this job at this point?
Right. I mean, there's only 32 of them, so you'll get candidates, but certainly the best ones do not jump on jobs like this because they don't have their first round pick next year. They may or may not have their quarterback, but they have to find out now. And frankly, I just think ownership is so meddlesome and so reactive that it amazes me that Tepper was part of the Steeler organization before he bought the Panthers. I mean, he's Bobby Axelrod from Billions. I mean, he's just buy, go. And this league moves at a much more glacial pace than what the Panthers do. I mean, they're going to trade for this guy. They're going to trade Brian Burns. They're going to do this. They're going to do this. They're just every shiny thing they jump at. And I think that's a tough way to live in this league. And if ownership doesn't change their ways in that manner, is it much better for the next guy? Now, I'm not saying they should have kept Reich. This has been a disastrous season. I mean, they're, I would say pretty clearly now the worst team in the league. I mean, the Titans basically handled you, and they're bad too. So it's miserable there. And maybe you give, I haven't heard what the plan is, but we mentioned this last week that maybe someone like McCown takes over and can get a true audition. That's been announced and I missed it, but I don't know who the interim guy is. But getting Reich out of there, I guess, makes sense. I mean, you can't condone with how it's going.
Yeah, and maybe just the non-competitive way that they're playing.
Yeah.
Tepper, it was super weird last week when after the loss, Tepper was just kind of like on the side during a press conference, like talking to reporters, and he was saying, we had a deal worked out with the Houston for the second pick, and they were going to go to the first pick. It was like a three-way trade, and I think that was his way of saying, we thought we were going to end up with maybe CJ Stroud, and he had misgivings there. Was there some arguments in how things were being? There had to be something more than just because expectations couldn't have been hugely high. I think they probably expected not to be maybe the worst team in the league, and maybe they still should have expected that was a possibility. But there has to be more of an infighting, more of a Frank, I want you to do things a certain way, or why aren't you coaching up this young guy that you loved and you wanted to draft? But the reports were that this coaching staff wanted CJ Stroud and that ownership is the one that wanted Bryce Young. So I don't even know what to think about all this. And hopefully we'll get some more details on why exactly and what this is. But I don't know how you could be in such a obvious rebuilding mode on offense. There's nobody to block for your young quarterback, nobody making plays for your young quarterback on offense, and to expect any more success than they've already had on that side of the ball, and to not give the people that you thought were worth hiring after you fired the last guy and you traded up with all this confidence in the offseason. Like, how can that confidence wane so fast and not be able to stick to a plan? It's just, none of it really makes sense with what's going on in Carolina right now. And you still don't know if you have your quarterback, and you don't have a first round pick next year.
Right. And Reich's an offensive guy, and the offense is hard to watch. But I mean, throwing Young in this situation is brutal. Like, I thought they had a decent O-line in place. It's been amongst the worst in the league. You knew their receivers are going to be bad without DJ Moore, and they're skill guys, and they're basically horrendous. There's very few guys open, and Young isn't elevating anything close to how Stroud is, and I don't think the coordinating's been as good either, and the defense hasn't been able to carry you. But you're in the worst division in the league, playing an easy schedule, and you can't beat anybody.
They turned down a trade for Brian Burns last year at the deadline for 2 first-round picks from the Rams, and now I can't imagine Brian Burns is excited to sign an extension with you, and you haven't extended him yet. I'd want out of there if I was him, and I wouldn't want any part of that job if I was a good head coach candidate. So I don't really see how this gets better unless they believe Josh McCown is just sitting there and he's actually the better option as a head coach, even though he has a half a year of coaching experience.
Which I think is possible. I mean, everyone raves about him, and Tepper's thrown money around. I think it's like the highest priced staff in the league, assistant coaches and coordinators and former players and all that stuff. But still, like you said, I mean, their first pick at best is going to be 33rd overall. I know they have some cap space, and they'll be certainly willing to use it. Maybe they can sign a T. Higgins or something like that. But, I mean, you might need a quarterback.
And you earned the pick for potentially a generational quarterback that another team gets to use after you drafted a guy who's not going to be as good, most likely. And we'll see. You can't close the door on what Bryce Young is, but we've seen this play out so many times in the NFL, right? Where a young quarterback goes into a situation, it's a bad situation, no talent around him. He has a revolving door. He has a new offensive coordinator every year for the first 4 years of his career. And then it's just a mess. And
it's just a mess.
It really looks like that's the direction it's going for the Carolina Panthers right now. And it starts at the top, and that top is above Frank Reich, who is now fired for the Carolina Panthers. So this is really not a good situation. I don't know how it gets better, but we'll find out. And no first round pick for those Carolina Panthers either. But they do have a nice little lead. We'll have a 1-game lead for the top pick in the draft. Matt, we're going to talk a little bit more after this about who has the second pick in the draft. We've got Eagles that had a huge win in overtime to come back and beat the Buffalo Bills, and a whole lot more from Week 12 next. Today's episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the quality candidates you want to hire faster and for free. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to have as many top-tier candidates as possible to interview. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So 86% of small businesses actually get a qualified candidate within 24 hours at LinkedIn Jobs. Thankfully, LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy, and they've just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, making the process even easier and quicker with the filters to find you the best candidates. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Today's episode is also sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Do the holidays rough for you there? I know they're rough for a lot of people out there. And even sometimes I struggle with some seasonal blues. And sometimes you just don't even look forward to the holidays. And this time of year can be a lot, no matter what the reason is. And it's natural. Maybe it's just some sadness. Maybe it's family issues. Maybe there's just anxiety and stress about all the things you have to do to get ready for a holiday, and so much pressure that's put on you to have some, great meal and great family atmosphere prepared, and it all lands on your shoulders. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all the stress and change, something to look forward to make you feel grounded and give you those tools to help manage everything that's going on in your specific situation in your life. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire, you get matched with a licensed therapist, and if you don't hit it off with that therapist, it's okay. You can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. So find the bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. The Philadelphia Eagles defeating the Buffalo Bills Sunday, 37-34 in overtime. The Bills had it. It slipped narrowly through their fingers. And can we start? We don't have a lot of love for kickers on this podcast, Matt. Not that we hate on kickers either. We just kind of bypass them a lot of times. This is one we cannot bypass. One of the best kicks we've seen all year and really over the course of the last few years. In the range, 60-yard field goal for Jake Elliott. That was an awesome kick. That is about as studly as a kick as you're going to have in the NFL, and help push that game to overtime. And after a Bills drive that ended in a field goal, after the Bills could not score that touchdown, when they had Gabe Davis, when Josh Allen, who was awesome, had Gabe Davis in the end zone. And in the end, it was 5 total touchdowns, by the way, from Jalen Hurts. He scampers in for the winning score, and the Philadelphia Eagles, Matt, do it again. Down at halftime, come back, win it in the second half, and in overtime in this case, 37-34. Philadelphia Eagles now 10-1, 2-game lead on everybody in the NFC.
Yeah, a lot to take away here. I mean, a really good game. I thought Josh Allen was unbelievable. Both teams ran the ball extremely well. I thought both quarterbacks were good, but especially Allen just stole the show. But one team's 10-1 and one team's 6-6 now. And frankly, if you told me this is going to be the Super Bowl rematch, I'd be like, I'll take it. This is good. I mean, I feel like if they played 10 times, this would probably be 5-5 or 6-4. But one team's 10-1 and one team's 6-6. And it just seems like kind of a microcosm of how these seasons have gone. And I hate to even say this extreme, but almost these organizations. I mean, going back to losing 4 straight Super Bowls, the 13 seconds in Kansas City. I mean, some of the hardships that this Bills team, when they've been at their best in organizational history, have had to deal with. And now this looks like a lost season. It's one of their best teams. I mean, I know they're 6-6. I keep saying that on purpose, but I feel like they have to win out to get to the postseason, and I don't think they will.
If I told you after week 12, Josh Allen was playing good and the Buffalo Bills were behind the Denver Broncos and the Houston Texans with the 10 seed currently going into week 13 in the AFC, your mind would be blown. And especially with the way that the Denver Broncos season started. They're the 9 seed, the Bills are the 10 seed right now. And the Buffalo Bills continue to find ways to lose too many games, and the Philadelphia Eagles keep finding ways to win just about every single game. And that's really how both those seasons have gone.
Yeah, I mean, I would power rank the Bills over the Browns, the Steelers, let alone those teams you mentioned. Like, everyone would love to see them in the postseason. I don't think it's going to happen. And the Eagles, may just be their year. I mean, things, when in doubt, things have gone their way.
And with a 3-touchdown passing, 2-touchdown rushing performance, I think Jalen Hurts climbs back up those MVP odds right now as well. If we were voting on league MVP, it's kind of a quarterback award. We thought maybe this is the year that a non-quarterback could sneak in there, and the way things have gone the last couple of weeks, it's looking more like it'll be a quarterback. And seeing Kansas City's receivers let down Patrick Mahomes, what the Baltimore Ravens are doing, I would say it's Mahomes, Lamar, and more likely it's Jalen Hurts or maybe even, Brock Purdy. And there's that matchup head-to-head with Niners and Eagles coming up this weekend as well, which is going to be a lot of fun. And so that's where we're at, I think, now after 12 weeks.
I would throw Dak Prescott's name in there as well, but you're
Mhm.
right. I mean, this team might be 15-2 or 16-1, or even if they're 14-3, that seems like worst case scenario at this point. He
And
has to be right in the mix.
Oh, absolutely. And if they beat the Niners this week, wrap it up. They're the ones.
Forget about it. Yeah. So and I'm still not sure they've played their best. You know, like I say that every week about them. Like, they're very impressive, but have they played their best game yet? I'm not sure.
You mentioned the Steelers and Browns and Cincinnati Bengals and some other teams in the AFC. Are the Pittsburgh Steelers the worst 7-4 team of all time, Matt?
Sort of, but I'll be honest. This game, they dominated the Bengals. I mean, the offense was quite good for the first time in forever. I don't know if that's a Canada firing, whatever. I'm sure it's something to do with it. Pickett's best game forever. Freiermuth got involved. Bengals aren't good, but this one was almost like never in doubt. I mean, the Steelers were the much better team.
There's that viral clip now of Deontay Johnson kind of just not caring, not doing anything. There's a fumble on the ground. He's not trying to get it. Has there been any fallout from that? I'm not sure if that's something that Mike Tomlin saw live. He might have had to find out about it later or see it in film. Is there anything going on Monday morning with that, and any uproar about Deontay Johnson?
I'll tell you tomorrow, because I intentionally on Monday mornings never leave the house. I just do research. I do stuff around here, and then I'll go to all the radio stations and all the Pittsburgh stuff, and I'm sure it'll come up. The one thing in his defense, which is indefensible, is several people told me that he thought the play before his touchdown was getting reviewed. So he was like paying attention to that, or I don't know. It should have, because it should have been a touchdown, but the ball was snapped. What do you mean? I mean, like, that's not an excuse.
Right. You're lined up and there's snapping wrong. Like, that's an indicator that you should probably pay attention to what's going on. 16-10, the 5 seed 7-4 Steelers getting by the Bengals, who fall now to 5-6, and they're in even a worse spot than the Buffalo Bills and don't have their quarterback getting out of that spot. So that's a bad situation for Cincinnati. How about the Atlanta Falcons, who defeated the New Orleans Saints, and we're going to have another sub 500 NFC South champion, aren't we, Matt? And let's see, looking at the standings here, tiebreaker now has the Atlanta Falcons at 5-6 as currently leading the NFC South, because they've got that head-to-head tiebreaker now over the New Orleans Saints, who are also 5-6, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers that keep losing football games. They're all the way down to 4-7 right now, and we already know what's going on with the Carolina Panthers, worst team in the league at 1-10.
Yeah, a couple small takeaways, and they're more fantasy related, but I think they correlate here. Is Atlanta lost Olave, I think it was the late third quarter. Shaheed got hurt in this. Michael Thomas was already out. So, like, they were missing their top 3 receivers by the end of the game, midpoint of this game. And I don't think Carr can elevate anyone at this point. But it was great to see Bijan getting the usage that we had all hoped, and I think that's a difference maker for them. I thought Ritter was okay, and it seems like they're sticking with him. But I wanted to mention Jesse Bates. I mean, he had a 92-yard pick six, and they're getting every dollar out of him. They made him a very highly priced safety, which is a questionable move to use your money, but he's been worth every penny.
Yeah, he's such an instinctive player, and it's not a secret, and it's not a coincidence that he gets his hands on a lot of footballs, and he's doing it in Atlanta just like he did in Cincinnati. And I understand why Cincinnati can't pay a whole bunch of money to a safety, and they drafted replacements for him, and it's just how you have to work if you're the Bengals. But he has been awesome for the Falcons, and yeah, just Bijan, it felt like he was in a little bit of a doghouse at some point this year with Arthur Smith, but he's your best weapon on offense. You got to utilize him. And it looked like there was a little rejuvenation with Ritter in this game. He was really excited, really pumped up for it. Even though you're a sub 500 team, you're fighting for first place, and he gets his shot. Maybe it's like his last shot to earn a starting job in the NFL. And I think you do have to stick with him. And at least
I think so at this point.
I like the vibe, at least, of the Falcons in Week 12.
I think they're going to win division. I mean, probably one and done, but they're going to win division, I think.
Speaking of a team that's probably going to win the division, and Week 12 will go a long way to helping them do that, the Jacksonville Jaguars over the Texans. And don't look now, but the New England Patriots might find their next franchise quarterback in April. All that and more coming up on this edition of Peacock and Williamson. Today's episode of Peacock Williamson is brought to you by PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. PrizePicks couldn't be easier. All you do is you pick 2 or more players, and you select more or less on their PrizePicks projected stats. It's the most fun you'll have playing fantasy football this season, and while you're having all that fun, win up to 25 times your money. Turn $10 into $250 at PrizePicks. And now with basketball season here, you can pick combo projections as well across football and basketball from the Specials League. They created this league just specifically for those combo bets between 2 or more players in different sports. For example, LeBron James plus Travis Kelce at a 10.5 combo of 3 points made and receptions in a given game, respectively. So have tons of fun and win yourself a little cash on the side with PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL or download the app and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that is prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Until the Eagles beat the Bills in overtime, Matt, the best game of Sunday, in my opinion, was the Jacksonville Jaguars. A lot of fun. A couple of young star quarterbacks going toe-to-toe. Rookie C.J. Stroud coming up a little bit short as the Jaguars were able to go to Houston and beat the Texans 24-21. Now a commanding lead at 8-3 for those Jacksonville Jaguars in the AFC South, but the Texans still hanging on in a wild card spot at 6-5.
Yeah, it does feel like a commanding lead. I mean, it's 2 games. They've split, so all the tiebreakers are shot. And no matter what, this is a successful season for the Texans. But they're still in the mix with the Steelers and Browns and those type of teams for a wild card spot and very well could end up there. I think the Jags have the better D, and I thought that showed, especially from a pass rushing perspective. You know, Allen had 2.5 sacks. But really what my takeaway from this isn't who's going to win the South. It's just – we get to see Lawrence versus Stroud maybe for the next decade. Like, that's so awesome.
Yeah, twice a year for a decade.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, they both were tremendous, too.
Yeah. They were both awesome. Texans aren't there yet, but, man, way ahead of schedule. Like, if you think about how opposite things are right now for the Texans and the Carolina Panthers, drafted 1 and 2, both taking quarterbacks, the Texans are just giddy about the quarterback they selected. The confidence you have when you just look at the sideline and see D'Amico Ryans. And by the way, Bobby Slowick, the offensive coordinator, Shanahan Tree, he's probably going to be a head coach as well sooner or later.
Maybe Carolina's next head coach. Who knows?
He might be one and done because he gets a head coach job. And it might be a situation like D'Amico Ryans where you have the first year as coordinator. And you're like, oh, yeah, hold on, let's do one more. And after 2 years as a coordinator, all of a sudden you're the hottest name on the market, and you end up getting a job. So look out there. CJ Stroud might not have that offensive coordinator for too much longer if things keep going this way. But CJ Stroud's awesome. So fun to watch. I think we undersold his just physical gifts in the draft because we knew he had a good arm, knew he was accurate, but it's amazing because the big knocks on both Stroud and Bryce Young. And you just never know. Because when you go back, you see like, oh, this was the scouting report. Man, this was important. And this wasn't important at all. And it was kind of built in. It was like, okay, if CJ Stroud fails, it's like, the Ohio State thing. He has all these great receivers. And things were just too easy, and they look too easy for him. He shows up in the NFL. Well, it still looks easy, and he had better receivers in college than he has in the NFL, and he's making them look like stars. And then you go to Bryce Young, and you're like, he's such an outlier for his size. And like when you look back, you're like, you took a 5'9", 185-pound quarterback, you traded up number 1 overall to get him. You're crazy. And that's the part of the scouting report where like, yeah, that's actually looking like it's coming to fruition, and his playmaking ability hasn't been able to shine. And obviously, we don't know what these quarterbacks are going to end up like, but it just could not be different 12 weeks into the first years of new regimes and new quarterbacks for the Texans and Panthers.
100%. I meant to say this before when we were talking Panthers, and you kind of touched on it too, is first off, 20 years from now, are we going to look back and be like, what was anyone thinking that tiny little quarterback should be the first pick in the draft, let alone who went after him, Richardson and Stroud and these guys. Yeah.
And he's doing a disservice. Now all the small quarterbacks are going to be like, oh, thanks. And I'm going to have even a more difficult time than I was before, because now there's some, high profile bust, and we can't put Bryce Young there. And I don't want to crush the young man. He hasn't had a shot.
No, they don't block for him or get open, but
and his coach already got fired. So not a good situation there. How about Tommy DeVito?
Yeah. we all knew he'd outduel Belichick's defense, right? I mean, again, a year ago, right?
I mean, just leaning into the Italian heritage. I mean, he's going to have what's this? I saw a sandwich pregame that's named after him at a famous deli. It's like a chicken parm or some chicken parm with fresh mozzarella on it, and it was like free sandwiches for life for Tommy DeVito for the stretch of games he's going to play here for the New York Giants. No matter what else happens, he's got wins as an NFL starter and actually taking the Giants potentially out of an opportunity to draft one of the top couple of quarterbacks in this draft. The Giants now 4-8, beating the Patriots 10-7. What an awful game to watch. But the big takeaway here is don't look now. The Patriots might be tanking their way into Caleb Williams or Drake May at the top of this draft. If I'm not mistaken, the Patriots right now would be drafting number 2 overall if the season.
Pretty sure.
And I don't know how many wins are left on the schedule for the Pats.
Yeah. Oh, they're horrendous. And Giants on a 2-game winning streak. Like, I didn't think they could beat anyone 2 weeks ago. And I mean, it's been the Jets and the Patriots, and barely have beaten either one. I think the Jets were last week, but either way, I mean, they're still miserable. I don't think they're close to being good. But I mean, DeVito, I guess, did enough. I mean, they're feeding Barkley heavy. He got sacked 6 times, but the Patriots turned the ball over 3. I watched very little of this.
Yeah, DeVito, from what I've seen, might not be worse than Daniel Jones. Like, he's making bigger throws, and he's kind of playing like this is his shot. He's like, this is my only shot. I'm going to let it fly, and he's doing that, which makes it kind of fun.
And meanwhile, the Patriot quarterback situation couldn't be worse. Like, Mac Jones seems like there's no chance he'll be a Patriot next year. Like, he'll be long-term. He might be like Mason Rudolph, just like a long-term backup, hangs around the league guy, like, will he ever revive his career? And I never thought Zappe had a chance to begin with. They don't have anybody right now.
And it's amazing how quickly you're either worth everything if you're a first-round draft pick, especially a quarterback, or you're worth nothing in 2-3 years. And it's looking like the latter for Mac Jones. And maybe it's odd to think that you get paired with Bill Belichick and that ruins your career. I don't think it's that. I think it's a lot of things, but there's definitely something leadership-wise you need as a quarterback that Mac Jones just seems to not have.
And I think that whole – I don't say the Patriots are dysfunctional. That sounds crazy, but nobody's going to want to go there. I mean, it's a miserable environment. Like, what free agent wants to go there? And Belichick deserves his share of blame. I mean, his personnel moves for 5 years now have been horrific.
There's actually been talk that he might jump to the other sideline, that the New York Giants are a potential landing spot for Bill Belichick. Like, that's his team. That's where his heart is from when he was, defensive coordinator for Super Bowl.
Sure. Parcells.
And so interesting. This is going to be an interesting offseason, and the Patriots might have a top 2 pick in this NFL draft.
I think they
Let's see. A couple other takeaways here. One is we've talked about how good the Bills are, how good the Eagles are. How about those Ravens now would be the 1 seed in the AFC at 9-3. They just keep on winning 20-10 win over the Chargers. I fully expect Brandon Staley to be fired. It might have happened while we were recording this podcast. That's how soon I think it could potentially happen. They're not doing much on either side of the football right now, but the Ravens defense is for real. And it took Chargers 60 minutes to get the ball into the end zone against that Ravens defense. The Ravens are going to be a problem if Lamar Jackson stays healthy into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I didn't think Herbert played bad, and people want to give him a hard time. He can't win the big one, blah, blah, blah. I think he's the least of the problems. Him and Keenan Allen are the whole offense with a little Eckler sprinkled in. But still, this Ravens defense, as you mentioned, held that offense to 4.2 yards per play, turned them over 4 times. We're after Herbert, especially in crucial situations. I think Baltimore might be the most well-rounded team in the league. I mean, I don't know. San Fran and Philly are both, don't have a lot of weaknesses either, but I'm not sure where the Ravens' weaknesses are. Mark Andrews is out, but likely looks more than fine. What's funny to me is Lamar is looking so good, but for the first time in his career, he's not putting up like monster fantasy numbers. So a lot of our listeners, fans aren't saying he's having a tremendous year, but he's having a tremendous NFL year.
Tell me about it. He was putting up some good fantasy numbers earlier on in the year, but they keep winning games, and he's not lighting up the fantasy scoreboards for you. But he's having probably his most efficient year. And they showed a stat during the game on Sunday Night Football. He's getting the ball out in under 2.5 seconds. That's like Drew Brees.
He was always at the top of the league. I mean, he was always the highest going.
Right? Exactly. So it's a new era of Ravens football. It's a new era of Lamar Jackson football, and it is working. And that defense is fast. And that defense plays angry, and they're good in a lot of.
I think he's a future head coach too.
You think he was a future head coach?
Ravens DC. I always forget his name.
I thought you were talking about Lamar Jackson. I was like,
well, maybe. Yeah.
When you make that much money, you definitely don't go into coaching and spend that much time. All right, that's our biggest takeaways from Week 12. Didn't expect the Frank Reich stuff, so we didn't get into all the games here. But if you have a question for us in this week's mailbag, hit us up on Twitter at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL, or you can always drop a question in the YouTube comments as well. Make sure you are subscribed on YouTube and everywhere you get your podcasts. And I do want to mention that there is a new 24/7 national Locked On channel. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows. So you'll see me and Matt there streaming for you all the time. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe for the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And of course, Matt and I will be back right here tomorrow. Peacock and Williamson.